Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Pluto Retrograde, April 2022. So I've been making a few videos about the eclipse. I've been talking a lot about it on Patreon. Honestly, I've been talking about it for like a while now because it's just really going to kick off that eclipse season. Obviously we have eclipses every single year, but there's just seemingly so much more intensity. And I think with this one in particularly, because we have so many other, planets changing signs at the same time or in the same window of time, if you've been wanting change, boy, oh boy, be careful what you wish for, because that's what's about to be happening. So we know that eclipses in general are usually very radical, unpredictable change, and there's a lot of fear mongering around it. It doesn't have to be something that is the end of the world. We survive them every single year of our lives. So, if it was going to kill us, it would have done that already, but there's a lot of intensity that comes with new beginnings and things that, really kind of pull out the rug from beneath our feet in order to jumpstart us or kick us into a new phase or a new era of our lives in ways that we probably wouldn't have been able to initiate ourselves. So like I said, Pluto's going to be stationing retrograde April 29th. This is going to be the day right before the new moon solar eclipse in Taurus. So Pluto is arguably the most transformative planet. It really rules transformation. Obviously that's the word that we want to use for it, and I feel like that word is almost like lots of judge in astrology, because we say everything's transformative, right? We say every new moon, every full moon, all of these things are transformative, but Pluto itself is really the volatile intensity that comes with change, and it's a sheer catalyst for taking one thing from one version of itself and turning it into another, whether that be through pain, through power, through challenges, whatever it may be. So I don't use the word transformation lightly when I'm speaking about Pluto in particularly, but it will be stationing retrograde at the 28th degree of Capricorn. So we know that retrogrades don't imply that the universe is like out to get us, out to ruin our lives, out to destroy everything that we love, even though it does feel like that sometimes depending on, the circumstances that we're dealing with in our personal lives. But we know that any retrograde simply just means to go backward. It's kind of like this feeling of retracing our steps. So because of this like hustle, no sleep, must be a millionaire by 30 years old type of culture that I feel like we're currently living in, things like setbacks and obstacles and delays and things just like falling through, plans not going as we planned, those things can feel like we're being totally screwed over by the universe. And a lot of the times too, I feel like when this stuff happens, we think of it like, oh, because I'm having so many issues with this, it's not meant for me. When the whole point of retrogrades is not to say you're not deserving of this, you're not allowed to have this, you cannot have the desires that you want. It's saying, yeah, sure, they're on their way to you, but we're going to mess this up a little bit first and ruffle your feathers because there's something you need to look at a little bit deeper before we can overwhelm you with the good things that are coming to you. So, I would say the true lesson behind any planet going retrograde, but especially one with as much intensity as Pluto, is to illuminate where those cracks in the foundation lie. That way we can seal up any holes and just resume to like regularly scheduled programming with a much smoother outcome than we would have initially had to begin with. In fact, we should be grateful for the fact that we have these forceful things in the sky kind of, making us retrace our steps, because it allows us a second chance. It asks us if we're sure about the decisions that we want to make, and it really helps us adjust to, major life transits instead of just throwing us in like this ice bath of shocking change. Because as much as we think that we want the things that we want, if we woke up with all of our desires, we would be so overwhelmed, we would want to like jump out of our skin. We would not know how to handle it. So I really like and appreciate the concept of retrogrades, especially as someone who has a lot of natal planets in retrograde in my birth chart, that it's not to stress you out, it's not to piss you off, it's not to make your life harder, it's to say, look at the things that need to be smoothed out, and by acknowledging those things and intentionally using them to your advantage, you will see why they were there in the first place. So what is this going to look like for us? So Pluto is a very thick, heavy, intense planet. Its presence is really comparable to me personally to like the Grim Reaper. It's like this energy of hovering above you, like having the devil and the angel on your shoulder, and it's just testing your strength and your perseverance through life's toughest and most transformative battles. It rules death, rebirth, and the very small but crucial details in between the process of metaphorical reincarnation. So again, this idea of like taking one thing, one version of yourself, and transforming into another version of yourself. It can often feel like this is like a really dark essence too, like I said, pulling out the rug from beneath our feet. It's really destabilizing, and it makes us struggle with finding our ability to like find our footing and feel like we can stand on 2 feet very strong. It kind of gives us this wobbly feeling of like having to adjust to change, things we're not used to, things we were not ready for, things we did not want. And it's almost like a tough love approach. So it really encourages that we face the storm head on rather than constantly trying to run away from it. And in the bravery that it takes to finally stand up to Pluto is where the true change, growth, and personal power comes from. So how will Pluto stationing retrograde affect the way that it plays out into your life? Pluto is a very slow-moving planet. It really takes about like 15 to 20 years to transit through a sign, meaning it's often referred to as a generational placement because it's more of like a heavy undercurrent of energy that we can measure over a long period of time rather than this presence that's showing up in our everyday lives in the way that we can kind of see the moon or Mercury playing out day to day. Pluto is something that you would see over years or over a generation or over an era in your life. So because it moves so slowly, it's only in very harmonious or very conflicting aspects that we tend to see the role that it plays in the unraveling of events in our lives. So for example, transit Pluto trine your natal moon would maybe indicate like a very cathartic emotional release or like a breakthrough of trauma that had been something that was like suffocating you for a super long time and finally being able to get over that. Similarly, transit Pluto, let's say square your natal Mars, could look like a sudden accident or like having a really bad blowout argument with somebody. It could also look like good things. It doesn't have to be limited to bad things, but it could also just be like a falling out of an important relationship in your life. Like it's only in those moments where we have pretty strong aspects to like our natal planets or just the transits in general where we're like, oh, okay, this is Pluto energy right here. So we know that astrology is never black and white. In fact, I would argue that it's usually only gray area. But the one thing to understand is that Pluto is here to transform us, and it will destroy literally anything that lays in its path because it's on a mission. So whether that's for better or for worse, it will do what it has to do to get you to look in the mirror at yourself. And like I said, you want to get through the storm rather than push against it, because the whole point is that Pluto is like, you're not running anymore. Like you got to face this head on. And the more that you try to resist that, I feel like is when you'll see more like upheaval in your life. So with the addition of the retrograde variable, this can indicate like a moment of thinking, maybe I don't want this giant change. Maybe I did make the wrong decision. Maybe I'm not ready for, this big shift that I want to make in my life. It doesn't always have to be a negative revelation that comes with this transit though. In fact, it could just be like a second chance at something you weren't really ready to let go of yet, or maybe another shot at like a major life opportunity or a very powerful moment reclaiming your power to a certain degree. It's kind of like this, I don't want to say like a hiccup. I feel like retracing your steps is probably the best way to put it, because it's not so much that you're losing progress or that you took 2 steps forward and now you're taking 10 steps back. It's not so much this lack of progression, but more so that progression isn't linear to begin with. And sometimes we need to look back and be like, all right, let me go through this a little bit slower in order to truly grow through something. So collectively, Pluto in Capricorn has emphasized the power and control dynamics along the themes that Capricorn symbolizes. So it rules authority, success, order, responsibility, and really redefining all the things that we know to be true about the Capricorn archetypes. So we've seen this more potent in the lives of the people that have this as a natal placement, which is Gen Z particularly. So they really have like this split perspective between either desperately needing to be like a millionaire, an elite, a celebrity, whatever it is, in order to feel worthy, versus wanting all of the success in the world without doing the quote unquote work that we're conditioned to believe is necessary in order to get there. So there's like this tendency to either obsess or reject hustle culture, Pluto ruling the extremes on each end of that spectrum though, and Capricorn ruling the excess or lack of structure, focus, determination, willpower, etc. So we will also see intense transformative endings and power dynamics being destroyed and rebuilt in terms of the government, money, and families. Collectively, I would say that's the effect that we're going to see over the next few months. But we could also see like really abrupt changes or intense events around politics, government, pay wages, the workforce, just structure and order in general, laws, things like that. So this can really be the destruction of those who even abuse their power or their very like authoritative roles, and the overhaul of desperate attempts to challenge and restrict groups of people. So now we're going to talk about how this is going to affect you on a personal level. So this is all going to boil down to what your rising sign is. You want to always figure out what your ascendant is when you're looking at a horoscope like this in order to see what area of your life that this retrograde is going to be happening in. I'm going to make sure there's a visual up on the screen. That way you can kind of see what area of your life to expect, maybe a shakeup, maybe a retracing of your steps, or just the themes of that house being illuminated in terms of how the eclipse is going to affect you. So for example, if you're a Scorpio rising, the eclipse is going to be in your 7th house of relationships, but with the added intensity of Pluto, you might make a super powerful change in your 3rd house, which is like your everyday life, your immediate environment, cars, friends, the way that you're thinking, etc. Similarly, if you're an Aries rising, the eclipse is going to be happening in your 2nd house of finances and personal values, and Pluto will naturally be stationing retrograde in your 10th house of career, which would possibly imply like changes in your career, your reputation, a promotion, etc. So if you take anything from this video, it's that Pluto's illumination of all of the imbalanced things in your life is not at all to harm you, but to address the power and control dynamics that are present in your narrative and learning to let go of them. Usually not so gracefully when Pluto is involved, but Pluto always tries to teach us that the whole point here is you are never supposed to use those things as a reason to feel weak or powerful to begin with. So this energy is similar to the South Node in Scorpio because Pluto is more modernly ruled by Scorpio. So anything that we really use as a vice, a crutch, an escape, a coping mechanism, a way to feel powerful, even if it's through like force, secret, manipulation, destruction, whatever it may be, all of that will melt away now, despite how powerfully and desperately you want to cling on to it. So this goes for obsessions, addictions, relationships, destructive behaviors, bad habits, etc. Anything that you use to kind of, I would say, uses a band-aid rather than fixing the root of the issue will most likely be illuminated and asked to kind of step up to change at this time. So it's not a loss, it's just the unusual feeling that comes with true freedom and liberation. It's time to let go, and it's going to be in your best interest. And I'm not saying this, listen, it's easier said than done, and I do not like letting go of things. I'm a little Cancer crab sun. I cling on to everything. I'm a Scorpio rising. This is going to be hitting me really hard when it comes to my identity. So I'm not saying this like it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's something that we're all going to go through, and it's better to kind of lock arms and accept the lessons that come with it and get excited for coming out on the other end rather than fearing it and, trying to close our eyes and cross our fingers and hope that nothing in our life changes, because that's exactly what's going to keep us stagnant. And these transits very specifically want us to do the opposite. Thankfully, Pluto will be very harmoniously aspected. It's going to be in a sextile to Jupiter, the planet of good luck and good fortune, a sextile to Venus, the planet of love, money, and beauty, as well as a trine to Mercury, so the planet of communication, thoughts, technology. All of these aspects are super supportive of romantic and financial growth, prosperity, particularly for Taurus and Pisces placements. However, there is some very excessive emotional intimacy or intensity that may come up because there's a square to the moon. So this is most likely welcoming an upheaval of emotions regarding the letting go. And this could really be around your belief systems and your feelings and the overindulgences, all of those things that no longer serve us. So there's probably going to be, with change and with the catharsis that comes with change, it's not something that just happens on a sunny Monday morning and then you go to work and carry on as usual. It's usually a breakdown for a breakthrough, or, through chaos comes clarity type of moment. It's really all the things that we've hidden and buried reaching their way to the surface to be exposed, acknowledged, and then us, kind of saying goodbye to them. So 28 degrees is a Cancer degree. It's indicative of home and family matters, your private life, who you are at the core, where you come from and where you so desperately want to go. So Pluto will be stationing direct on October 8th, 2022 at 26 degrees of Taurus, which is energy that we'll be incredibly familiar with post-eclipse en route to the fall eclipse, because it's encouraging us this whole entire time to build a stronger, more stable and practical foundation in the area of life that Taurus rules in our natal charts, but it's supported by the area of life that Capricorn rules with this Pluto retrograde. For Aries risings, this is going to be happening in your 10th house of your career, public image, reputation, success, success, industry, professionalism, achievements, public persona, goals, your father, and fame. So I always like to include the father thing just because it's like an archetype of Capricorn, which is traditionally rules the 10th house. It doesn't always have to mean, something horrible is going to happen to your dad or something like that. It's more so indicative of masculine traits and archetypes like success and delegation and achievements, your reputation, things like that. So having Pluto retrograde here might be like a step back or retracing of your steps around something regarding your career, your reputation, your ability to maybe go back and change something, improve something. Maybe you kind of dove like headfirst into something that was really going to alter your achievements or your success, and it could have just been like biting off more than you can chew. And it doesn't have to mean you have to throw it out the window, but that maybe you just need to slow down a little bit and kind of get your ducks back in a row. That way things can go a lot smoother later on for you in a way where your future self is going to thank you. This is also going to illuminate power and control dynamics around your career and what you use to make you feel powerful, either in the workplace or with the legacy that you're leaving, and needing to kind of separate yourself from things that are being used as things to boost your ego rather than actual things that are going to set you up for success. Taurus Risings, this Pluto retrograde is going to be happening in your 9th house of travel, philosophy, wisdom, beliefs, perspective, higher education, law, religion, and ethics. So this is an interesting house to be having such a transformative transit happening through, because this house is very mental. I mean, there is physical aspects in it in the sense that it's traveling, it's going on vacation, it's going back to school, things like that. But this is something that's really more so going to be happening in your head, in your mind. So this could look like learning something new, there being like a breakthrough when it comes to your faith or your perspective. But I do want to kind of harp on the fact that, again, like growth isn't linear. There might be something here where it comes to your perspective on something, or how far you've learned into something, or how much you've invested into education, where it might feel like you kind of lost your progress. Don't fall for that. Just stick to the plan, stick to what you are doing, and kind of see it through, and you'll see how this is going to pay off for you later. I would even argue that this is going to illuminate maybe your belief systems that you use in order to convince yourself that you're more powerful or more in control to a certain degree. This can really bring a lot of things into play when it comes into like faith, like religion, orthodox thinking, even your spirituality, and what things have power over you, but also what ideologies you use in order to convince yourself you are more powerful. Gemini Risings, this is happening in your 8th house of sex, death, transformation, secrets, transactions, shared investments or possessions, shame, self-sabotage, loans, privacy, and mystery. Say that 3 times fast. Oh my God. I feel like having Pluto, this is the thing. Like I said, Pluto's such a slow moving planet. Having this go through your 8th house for the last like 15, 20 years, you, I would say, have been going through it on the most internal level, because yes, this is like things like finances, tangible things that we see in real life, but it's also transformation itself. We know that the 8th house is traditionally ruled by Scorpio, which rules Pluto. So you're already kind of going through this like intense letting go, stepping into a new version of yourself. Like you probably are a completely changed person, obviously, than you are when Pluto entered your 8th house. But having this retrograde here is kind of like the final checkpoint before it transits into your 9th house. So we know that the 8th house is being transformation, and then it leads into the 9th house of a new perspective through that transformation. So there might be something here where there's just a few more, loose ends that you need to tie up around things that have to do with other people, whether that be things like transactions, investments, agreements, contracts, whatever it may be, but even things like trust and intimacy and your ability to seriously let go of addictions, vices, things that are not good for you, in order to come out as this renewed person and step into that 9th house of an entirely new perspective on life. You're really going to be asked to let go of the things that you use as a support system to feel more in control or more powerful over things in your life, circumstances, other people, but also how other people and other things outside of you, external to you, have power over you, and having to be able to let go of that, having to be able to destroy the things that have power over you rather than letting them destroy you. Cancer Risings, this Pluto retrograde is happening in your 7th house of relationships, marriage, justice, business partners, contracts, equality, balance, and enemies. So Pluto, with it being such a slow moving transit and is going through your 7th house for quite a while now, it's energy that you're used to, but there might be this need to kind of tie up loose ends around your relationships, your commitments, or your partnerships for whatever degree. So we know that this house isn't only limited to your romantic relationships, it's even things like your enemies and people that you don't get along with. And And with Pluto kind of touching on, I mean, this is a cadent house, meaning it's one of the more potent, intense houses when it comes to the framework of our entire lives, with this being your relationships, your interpersonal relationships, usually pretty much completely mold like your life experience here. So having Pluto retrograde, there might be a breakthrough or a breakup of somebody in your life that you have a relationship with that might just need to happen in order to progress forward in a way that's going to be in your best interest. I would even say though, with this again energy of like retracing your steps, it might be the regret that comes with letting go, or the I'm not ready yet, or the let's try one more time. This is also really going to illuminate any power control dynamics that are happening between you and a partner, you in a commitment, you in a relationship, whatever it may be. It's going to highlight the things where there's imbalances between either both partners, or just where there's unfairness, or where there's power and control being held over you, but also your ability to have to let go of things that you use in order to convince yourself you're the one calling the shots. Leo risings, this is going to be happening in your 6th house of work, co-workers, habits, health, diet, pets, acts of service, fitness, and jobs. So this house is a little bit more mundane, right? It gets this reputation of being boring because it's like our doctor's appointments and our diet and the things that we eat and the things that we do in our everyday life to be productive. So it's not to say that you're not going to see as much as an effect of this in your life, but I would say having Pluto retrograde here might be like a powerful breakthrough, more so around your ability to take care of yourself. And when I say take care of yourself, it doesn't just mean the whole self-love, oh, I'm just going to take a bath and put a face mask on and hopefully I'll be healed after that. It's more so like the small details in your everyday life adding up to the bigger impact on what you leave on yourself, and needing to take care of yourself and create positive habits that are actually going to, nurture you. You're the one that's stuck in your body your entire life, and you want to make sure that you take very good care of that. So there might be, I'm not trying to scare anybody, because I know that health is obviously a very sensitive topic for everybody. I'm not going to say, oh, you're going to get diagnosed with something or something like that. But I would say with retrogrades usually being like a setback or something like that, there just might be something where you need to take care of yourself a little bit more, and it might get in the way of something else. Or you might struggle with work or getting along with your coworkers because of, some sort of issue in the workplace or something like that. I feel like it's not going to be too intense for you, but I would say just try to take care of yourself without going too hard. You don't want to overwork yourself. You don't want to over restrict yourself. There could be a powerful breakthrough here in the way that you take care of yourself or your productivity in the workplace or something like that, but just make sure that you're not going too hard on yourself. This is also really going to illuminate the small details of things, your ability to kind of connect all of the dots, and power and control dynamics that come hand in hand with your ability to get things done, whether that's like vices, addictions, bad habits, things that get in the way of you being able to be the best version of yourself, but also things that you use to try and have control over other things going your way. For example, using alcohol to cope with something that's really stressful, this would be the time where you start to see the consequences of that, or how it sets you back, rather than growing the strength in building a routine that's going to set you up for success and seeing how there's power within yourself, and you don't need to seek power outside of something external to you. Virgo Risings, this is going to be happening in your 5th house of sex, romance, fertility, attention, drama, entertainment, dates, children, pregnancy, creativity, joy, indulgence, talent, and fame. So I kind of like this energy of Pluto being in the 5th house, because we know that the 5th house is like arguably the best house in the chart. It's very indulgent. It's all of the things that bring us pleasure. But I would say with a retrograde happening here, this might be where you might see the hiccup of a consequence in doing too much of a good thing. You know how people say everything needs to be in moderation? I would say this can kind of be seeing I don't want to use the word consequences, I feel like that's a little harsh, but maybe seeing the result of what partying too much can do, being too irresponsible with sex, even like maybe needing to be more careful with how much money you spend or how much you go shopping or something like that. This is a pretty enjoyable house, but to have something that's kind of like a wake-up call and a reality check happen here can sometimes be a little scary, or kind of at least just knock us off our feet a little bit, because it's kind of saying, it's like a slap on the wrist almost. And it's not to say that something bad is going to happen to you, but there might be this need to kind of create a plan, a budget, or strategize like how to not overindulge or do too much or be excessive with the things that feel good to you, because you might need to learn to almost earn those things first before you overindulge, or to maybe be a little bit more organized, or to take them more seriously. And it's not to say you can't enjoy these things anymore, but that you should maybe hold them up to like a higher standard. That way it's working in your favor and it's not something that you have to just randomly face the consequences with anymore. I would also argue that this just illuminates power and control dynamics over what you use as not necessarily escapism, but as indulgence, and kind of seeing that with great power comes great responsibility. And you can still have fun, but it's a work hard, play harder type of mentality that you can kind of use to your advantage, but you need to make sure that the play harder part has boundaries and has things where you know when to sit one out, or when you know when to not overdo it in order to protect yourself, and seeing how some of the things that you seek excitement in external to you have power over you and destroying their ability to control you. Libra Risings, this Pluto retrograde is going to be happening in your 4th house of home, family, property, private life, emotions, women, roots, femininity, comfort zone, moving, and nostalgia. So this immediately makes me think that there might be a resurfacing of like family trauma, and that's not to scare you. If you've had like a horrible childhood, or you just have really conflicting relationships with your family, I'm not saying that it's something you're going to have to suffer through, but it might be something that you just think about on your own, because this house is like very close to our emotions and our nostalgia and getting in touch with who we are at the core. It's not so much that you're going to be face to face with family issues, but that you might think that you healed through something that might still sting a little bit, and it's time to like acknowledge that stinging. Or there might be something with a moving situation. Maybe you were so ready to move out of your hometown or get into a new house or something like that, but there was a few little loose ends that you needed to tie up in order to like fully make that transition. There could just be this like resurfacing of intense or deep matters regarding such a private area of your chart that need to be acknowledged in order to progress forward. I would even argue that like it could be a very healing transit for you, because that retracing of the steps energy is kind of like looking back at something. Like I'm almost imagining somebody looking at childhood pictures and kind of having that bittersweet feeling like, oh, maybe I was really sad here, but I'm able to look at this now, and instead of being heartbroken, be like, okay, this is all part of my narrative, my story. Like this isn't something that keeps me up at night anymore, but that I take for what it is, and I'm growing as a person. Like I feel like this is going to be a really deep thing for you, but in a way that will be very powerful. When it comes to like your properties and things like that, there just might be some like intense things around like investments or money or agreements or contracts that need like a double or triple check. So just be careful with that stuff. But otherwise, I feel like this is something that might be a little bit sensitive, but very powerful for you guys. This will also most likely illuminate power and control dynamics between you and other family members, or just the way that you resonate with yourself on a very private level. I would say that it's important here to maintain what gives you personal control. So that's setting boundaries, being able to know when to leave a conversation or to not get involved, knowing when to walk away from something. Sometimes when it comes to family, it can be harder because we love them and we want to make sure that we're on the same page as them. But you want to be careful here that you don't allow anybody outside of you to kind of treat you as a victim and put you in this victim position and try to own you, control you, manipulate you, take advantage of you, etc. Scorpio Risings, this Pluto retrograde is happening in your 3rd house of communication, thoughts, speaking, talking, writing, siblings, best friends, cars, environment, everyday things, and people, education. So having Pluto retrograde here is interesting because this is a pretty mundane house. It's similar to the 6th house in the sense that it has this like reputation of being boring, right? Because it's just our everyday lives. It's the little details of what we do every day, but how that culminates into the larger image of who we are, what we do, what we experience, literally what our entire life looks like. So having Pluto retrograde here, there might be this need to retrace your steps around your thought patterns, your communication skills, or something that's going to alter your everyday environment. So I would say that maybe this Pluto retrograde happening in the 4th house of home and family, or maybe the 8th house of shared investments would be actually moving. But I do feel like there might be this aspect of you shifting your environment. It doesn't have to look like buying a house or something like that, but maybe there's something where you're going to have to double check if you're sure about wanting to make a life shift, or whether that's like a lifestyle change or the people that you keep around you. Like there might be this thing where you're being asked to closer analyze the plans that you have right now, the thoughts, ideas, communication, plans in your immediate environment right now. And that's not to say that like you're making the wrong decision or something, but there could be this powerful stepping back of like, okay, I know you want this, but you might not be ready for it yet. We need to focus on the everyday habits that we need to build in order to prepare you to be able to, stomach that new life change. So it just might be a double checking of decisions that might seem small, but they're actually going to create like a ripple effect into your life changing. This will also be illuminating the power and control dynamics between the way that you communicate with other people and in what ways you feel like you need to manipulate or try to take advantage of certain situations and the words that you use and the way that you say them in your body language in order to maintain control in your stance, but also how other people are going to flip the script on you and try to take advantage of you, own you, control you, manipulate you with the way that they speak to you and the way that they affect like your everyday circumstances, whether that's getting a ride from them, getting around, conversations you have with them, the things that they post about you on social media, etc. Sagittarius Risings, this Pluto retrograde is going to be happening in your second house of finances, values, securities, insecurities, investments, personal style, material possessions, work ethic, ownership, and money. So Pluto, it's been here for a while, right? It's not new energy that's coming out of nowhere, but it might be this final process of stepping back and kind of reassessing what are the things that I've learned in the last 15, 20 years as far as what do I value? What am I proud of? What feels important to me as a person? Because we know that the second house is really about you, what you own, what you feel, what you believe to be true, what is important to you versus what is important to everybody else in the world. And this house is traditionally ruled by Taurus. So even if you don't have Taurus ruling your second house, this has this sort of anchoring effect of the emotional and financial security and possessions and stability and foundation that comes with the themes of Taurus. So to have the Pluto retrograde happening here, I feel like it's kind of not impacting you guys harder, but really putting a nail in the coffin as far as trying to make the point that it's time to stabilize what you truly believe in, what truly belongs to you, and really facing like what your values are and creating that stable foundation in who you are and being able to stand alone without everybody else co-signing on thinking you're worthy enough, thinking you're cool enough, thinking that you're important enough, and being able to just say, I think I'm enough and that's okay. So there might be this like double backing feeling of like being tested in that area. It could be something where maybe you're being faced with a decision to, for example, this is just something that I feel like is easy for everybody to understand, an ex coming back or something like that, and you having that decision of, okay, do I give this person who super disrespected me another chance, or do I understand that I've played this game before and it's not worth my time anymore because my standards are high and I value myself? Obviously you want to choose the latter, but this Pluto retrograde might be this test or this like, are you really able to walk the walk? Or are you just talking the talk of being able to value yourself, take yourself seriously, prioritize yourself, etc. There will most likely be some illumination around power and control dynamics regarding finances, money, and your personal values, how you use those to your advantage to convince yourself that you feel more powerful in certain situations, but also how people use these themes to have power over you as well. Capricorn Risings, this is going to be happening in your first house of self, identity, ego, looks, beginnings, body, and approach to life. So this is interesting because we know that the first house is everything that has to do with you. Your ascendant lies here in the first house. If this is something you have natally, it's going to be really strong for you because this is like the final step before it moves into the second house for the first time in your life. It's going to be in a different house of your values and your finances and things like that. So having this transit through a house that's really altering your sense of self and identity and who you are, there could be this test of standing true to your beliefs or who you are or this person that you want to be. I would argue that there might be like a small window here where it's going to affect people visually, whether it's your looks or like dyeing your hair, changing up your style or something like that. It might be this like, are you sure you want this type of feeling around adopting a new lifestyle or a new perspective on life or a completely new look. There might be like a hiccup or like a moment of maybe thinking you want to do one version of yourself, but then being like, never mind, that was just a little bit of a phase. But having Pluto retrograde here in general is really going to, I think, illuminate just your sense of self and the way that you resonate with yourself. And obviously that's most important because you're stuck in your own body for your entire lifetime. So it's not necessarily something that others will maybe see. I feel like this is also of a physical aspect, so not something where it's going to affect your money or it's going to affect your job or it's going to affect your car or something like that, but more so something internal that's going to be around healing, around self-acceptance, around identifying with yourself, etc. This is also really going to illuminate the power and control dynamics you hold against yourself, and that you feel that you need to maybe own, control, manipulate, or use against other people in order to feel more personal power for yourself. Aquarius Risings, this Pluto Retrograde is going to be happening in your 12th house of sleep, dreams, secrets, subconscious, what's hidden, spirituality, psychology, limited beliefs, privacy, solitude, loneliness, karma, closure, and healing. So this is beautiful. I think with the 12th house, traditionally being ruled by Pisces, so endings, culmination, coming full circle, I feel like that's the best phrase to use here, is that there's this moment of like coming full circle. And like I mentioned before, it's not so much that you're stepping back in your progress, but there might be something where you're being asked to look a little bit deeper. It might be at something in particularly, or just your feelings internally overall. But I feel like it's almost going through, when people talk about how, I'm not saying this is a fact, but just how people say that they've experienced dying before and that they have their life flash before their eyes and they see everything that they've ever gone through in like 5 seconds. That's what this makes me feel like. And I feel like it's taking you through this journey of like looking at all of the internal work that you've been doing for some years now and kind of taking it all in, and maybe tying up loose ends around something that was still painful, or a fear that you still have, or anxiety or something like that. In fact, I would even argue that you might be more prone to things like anxiety or lack of sleep or insomnia during this time, just because it's particularly affecting like your subconscious and your sleep and privacy and things like that. But I would say to take some time alone, and it's not to say to isolate yourself, but I'm thinking of like the Hermit card in tarot, where it's just like getting some moments to yourself in peace and quiet and just thinking and feeling everything that you've been going through for a while now, and seeing how you've gone from where you came from to where you're going, and the entire journey that is. And I would say that the retrograde just might be a slowing down of that process of closure, but that it's only slowing down in order for you to fully absorb it. There will probably be some illumination around power and control dynamics regarding your psyche, like your subconscious, and how much you allow things like addictions, but also like dreams and your anxiety and your depression and things like that to hold power over you, and trying to break free from the shackles of those things. Pisces Risings, this Pluto retrograde is going to be happening in your 11th house of friends, co-workers, manifestation, networking, charity, groups, friends, the future, astrology, and social media. So this is interesting because this is a pretty, I don't want to say a social house. I mean, it is social because it's like your community and where you fit in and stuff like that, but there might be this like transformative energy around whatever groups you associate with. Like this almost makes me think that it's someone who, let's say for example, was a part of a church being like, this isn't it for me anymore, I don't align with this anymore, or having this hiccup where you're kind of like reassessing who you tend to align with in your public life, because this is at the height of your chart, meaning it's kind of associated like with your career, but it's really your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations. So I feel like we're balancing on this beam that's kind of like figuring out what you really want out of this life, but then knowing that in order to get there, you have to surround yourself with people that are going to support and align with you in order to do that. So it's kind of like this balance, or like this game that you have to play, where in one hand you have all of the things that you've ever wanted, and then the other hand you have people that have been in your life for a while now and you probably love each other, but that maybe just can't come with you. And this retrograde might be needing to double check your groups, the communities that you're a part of, even like your leadership qualities and what you stand up for, what you believe in terms of the world at large, but then how that aligns with the things that you want, and how you're going to be able to set yourself up to kind of make movements forward in that direction based off of the people that you surround yourself with. This will most likely illuminate any power and control dynamics as well that are kind of abusing the dynamic of the people that you surround yourself with. So your friends, and how they try to own you, control you, manipulate you, take advantage of you, use you, etc., or how you may do that to them, as well as like the larger concept of groups. So again, like churches, organizations, charities, even social media, things online as well, and how those things have power over you and breaking free of those shackles. I hope this was helpful to you guys or answered some sort of questions that you had, gave you guys a sense of clarity. Of course, if there's any confusion or you guys want me to elaborate on anything, I'm more than happy to. You can leave a comment, you can message me on Instagram. That's usually where I'm most able to get in touch with everybody. But as always, this is nothing to fear, but everything to be excited to experience. So you've survived plenty of eclipses before. You've survived quite a few Pluto retrogrades as well, and plenty of intense astrological events in general. So you've got this like you always do. And I really look forward to seeing all the transformation that everybody's going to go through. I've been saying this over and over again in all the eclipse readings, that who you are today is not going to be comparable to who you are in the fall. And that's not something to be intimidated by. Obviously, you'll be the same person, but there's a lot of change that we're all going to be going through, particularly because we have some Uranus things going on as well with this eclipse. And Uranus is unpredictable change, unusual circumstances. It's very rebellious and very Wheel of Fortune energy. So it's all exciting. Obviously, some of us are going to deal with more challenges than others, but it's nothing to keep you up at night. These things are here for your best interest, and I'm super excited to see where we end up on the end of this portal during the May 16th lunar eclipse. And I'm going to make a video on that as well. But I love you guys. Thank you for listening and watching. As always, please like and subscribe, and let me know if there's anything else that you guys would like me to post.